two more onto that. Stepping forward, kesagiri. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
Other side. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
And what you see is that while the cuts are very similar, a diagonal cut from the left or a diagonal cut from the right, because we always hold the sword with the right hand dominant, there are some asymmetries which result in the cuts behaving and performing a little bit differently. But as we practice, we try to work towards consistency such that each side is very, very similar, if not identical. Yoko giri, migi yoko. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
Other side. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
Kiriagi. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
Shidan Kamai. We're going to finish with a straight cut and then a thrust. So the straight cut is probably the simplest of all, just straight down. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Yeah!
So each of those would represent a slicing action, and that's how the blade would work. This last one is a thrust, and the Japanese sword is a little bit unique in that it is both a very capable blade when it comes to cutting or slicing, as well as thrusting and piercing. Many, many blades across various cultures are really designed to be one or the other, and in this case, it actually performs very well in both uses. Ski, ich,
Hey!
ni,
Yeah!
chiburi, noto. As we move forward through the demo, you're going to see these cuts and these movements play out, whether it's in paired work or when we perform tamishigiri, the cutting. As those are all basic cuts performed one by one by one, we are now going to look at what happens when you combine cuts so that you get a combination of one and then another cut in succession. This is called nami, which just means wave, and we're going to focus on the idea that now we have two targets, one to the left and one in the middle. And then we're actually going to focus then on a third, one to the right, and then come back to the middle. Hasogamai. Two cuts per count. Ich!
Hey! Yeah!
Yi!
Yeah! Ho!
Hum!
Ho! Hey!
Yi!
Hey! Yeah!
Shirankumai. Shiburi. Noto. In addition to the various kamai and basic cuts, we also have some blocks, which are almost always used as the precursor or the first part of a counterattack. So we're going to demonstrate one of our most basic counterattacks. It's called makiuchi. And we're going to do it in the various pieces that it's composed of so you can see each element. Seigan kamai. Kasumi. Joran. Shinchoku. Again, ich, ni, hum. Seigan kamai. Now, nobody was moving, and you can imagine if somebody's cutting at you, you're going to want to move as well. Or if you want to get into a target area, you're going to need to enter. So now we're going to add a little bit of movement. Still very simple movements with the sword, but now adding some body movement. And if everybody will go to Kasumi, please.
Yeah, you do.
Kasumi, you'll notice the block, the way I think of it is like a roof, where the ridge of the roof is where everybody's left hand is, And then the gutter, or the edge of the roof line, is where the tip of the blade is. And if you think of rain, the rain goes from the ridge to the gutter. And that's the same idea. When somebody is attacking, it will be diverted from the high point to the low point. And if we want to stay dry, we're never going to move into the rain. We're going to move away from it, towards that ridge side. So in this movement, at this point, they would shuffle left. Everybody shuffle left. And they would come to jodan, and then strike. And so by combining that movement with the block, we have a belt and suspenders type of approach to the counterattack. Let's try that all together now. All movements, one count from Seigan. Ich!
Hey!
Yi!
Ya!
Good. Shibiri. Noto. What you see us doing there is a very traditional kind of a way of putting the blade away. Many schools have different ways of doing it, but they all are called chiburi, and that translates to blood flick. So this idea is that you are flicking blood off of your blade. It's a nice idea, but the reality is you would never be able to clean your blade by just waving it around. So you really would have to wipe it down afterwards. But it gives you an opportunity, after you think you are done, to take stock of what's around you, to let your awareness expand into the space and confirm that you are indeed safe at that point, and you can put your blade away. And that really is the practice that you should be engaged in. You finish cutting, you finish dealing with whoever's in front of you, let's take stock, and now we're safe and we'll be done. We're going to move on to what's called Bato-do, and this is the art of cutting from the draw. We we practice 5 different draws in Shinkendo, and we're going to demonstrate some of those for you today. Goho bato ho kion ichi 1本目 Shime!
Hey!
What you see everybody using, this wooden sword, this is called a bokuto. In normal practice, every day, we use mostly bokuto. However, after practitioners become a little more comfortable, we will introduce what's called an iaito, and that is a metal blade which is not sharp, and it uses the saya, which is a scabbard, and is otherwise identical to a real blade. You use that, become familiar with it in a way which is low risk to you, the user, because it's not sharp. You learn how to use a blade, draw it, put it away, and then eventually graduate to a live blade, something that is sharp. We do not use live blades with paired work, fortunately. But we will demonstrate live blades and technique at the end. Again, not again, 2本目, number 2. 4バットホ2本目. Shime!
Hey!
And the form that you see is very similar between this one and the last one, where the change is really just the draw that allows the practitioners to focus on one element as opposed to trying to juggle a few hundred. 3本目 Shime!
Hey!
4本目 Shime!
Hey!
5本目 Shime!
Hey!
And each of these draws is intended to be entirely offensive, potentially defensive, or maybe a combination of both, where you first defend or move away, and then perform some sort of an attack. Again, these are all kind of basic techniques, one by one, fundamental elements. We're going to demonstrate now another form of bato-do, which is a little bit more fluid, and instead of doing a single cut, we'll do 3 cuts. 5バットホ3点切り1本目 Shime!
Hey! Ya! Ho!
And that's the idea. what you'll see then as we practice is that we start with something basic and then we progress it. Make it a little bit more challenging, a little bit more, we'll call it advanced. And then we progress it again and again and again. So as we go through the demo, I'm going to try to point out how we take a basic technique and progress it. So you get a feeling of not only the most basic, but also some of the more dynamic elements. We're going to move on to what's called kata. These are basic forms. First one we're going to perform is called happogiri, and it takes those 8 basic cuts that we were working on earlier and incorporates them into a single form. Happogiri, yoi! It's
Hey!
E
Ya!
On
Ho!
E
Hey!
Go
Ya!
Up
Ho!
Hit
Hey!
Hot
Ya!
In this practice, this specific kata, we focused on a single target. Now we're going to look at multiple targets, one to the front, to the side, and to the rear. Same basic cuts, however, we're going to move more in order to address the different targets. Happogiri ura. Hit.
Hey!
E.
Ya!
On.
Ho!
E.
Hey!
Go.
Ya!
Up.
Ho!
Hit.
Hey!
Hot.
Ya!
And finally, for the kata, we're going to demonstrate something called chidensei, which is a progression. It's not the exact same kata. It's a new kata, but it is a lot more dynamic. It's about midway through the series of kata that we practice. We're going to do it with a handful of fewer people because it requires more space. So maybe just the front row here, please. Chidensei, yoi! Continuously. Shime!
Hey!
Are you guys ready?
Hey!
Yeah?
Yeah.
Know the show?
Ho!
Awesome,
Hey.
awesome.
Yeah.
I remember we want everybody to
Hey! Ya!
scream and cheer
Ho!
so we can get rid of evil
Hey.
spirits. Yeah? The louder the better.
Ya!
Yeah? Let's have a practice.
Ho.
How are we doing this morning? Oh, that's good. Yeah, you guys doing good.
And in that case,
Okay.
obviously,
Well,
we're
no,
combining
I know.
multiple cut lines, multiple different
Okay.
types of cuts,
So,
moving
for
around,
some, people
jumping,
that just got here,
turning, etc.
What we're going to do is
We're going to transition now to touch-each. Touch-each is the paired work that I referenced earlier. This is not the same as kendo, which is free sparring with bamboo shinai and armor, bogu. This is a little bit different. Everything we do here is prearranged, but you can see no armor, and the swords are hard wood versus the flexible shinai. So we're going to start with rokinudach, like we did yesterday. Pair up, please.
But yeah, so I'm gonna have a couple nice volunteers. They're gonna be feeding the lions.
This first one that we do has no contact. So you might ask, well, why are we doing it? It's because initially you need to learn how to gauge what another person is doing. You need to learn how to move based upon what somebody else is doing and become aware of how they move, what their distance is.
We're excited to be here.
Alright.
So once again, feel free to scream and cheer. Yes.
Straight cuts.
Okay. So let's have one more practice. How
Go
are we
ahead.
doing this morning? Yes.
It.
Hey!
E.
Ya!
Returning. San.
Ho!
I.
Hey!
Tesagiri. It.
Hey!
I.
Ya!
On.
Ho!
I.
Hey!
So that's relatively straightforward. The whole idea is think of the person in front of you as if they are a mirror reflection of yourself. If it's a mirror, it should be identical to what you're doing, and that's the idea here. Each person needs to adjust their technique to try to match what their partner is doing. I'll try to be loud enough so y'all can hear me. Ippondachi. Everybody, Chiron Kamai, Ippondachi. Ippon-me, number 1. Continuously. Shime! Returning with number 2. Nihon-me, returning. Hajime! Sanmon-me! Shime! So what we just demonstrated there is called Ippondachi, and it's a sequence of one-by-one type techniques where you learn how to do a single counterattack and focus on intensity of movement or on the specific counterattack. There are lots of things you can focus on, but they're relatively basic. Now we're going to take some individual movements and string them into a longer form called Juppondachi. Juppondachi. Dave, are you? No? Okay, out. Richard and Bob attacking. Richard and Bob attacking. Yoi! On count. It's. What we've demonstrated so far is all strikes, cutting down. The next one is going to be what happens when you look at thrusting attacks and movement. Richard and Bob Tsunami. Now we're going to finish with one of our longer touch-uchi, which is called Juppolomote. That's 5 sections, each of which focus on a different theme or element of swordsmanship. Sorry. I'm going to count each section. So what we've just gone through then is a progression of increasingly dynamic and complex touch-uchi drills.
Okay, so we're going to give you a couple minutes to kind of take some pictures, so form a file, and then you guys can take some pictures of the lines. And,
okay, so everything you've seen so far is single sword technique. And that's certainly the basic techniques that we practice. And that's going to be your most commonly used, if you get in a sword fight, set of techniques. What we're going to look at now is called Nito-ken, and that translates to two-sword technique. We're going to look at a handful of kamae, and then look at one of the basic kata. So, basic kamae. Chiron. Chiron. Kowaki. Kowaki. Joran. Morote Joran. What's fun about Nito-ken, I'm going to keep them here where it's the most tiring, is you now have to keep track of both hands. They're not along for the same ride together. It's a lot more difficult. So we typically only work with more advanced students on the Nito-ken because you have to now pay attention to your left hand, whereas before it's almost all right hand. Chiron kamae. Giran. Furo. Okay, uki shizumi. Yoi. We'll count out each movement. This technique is 4 sections, each 3 movements. So we're going to count it out so you can see them each individually. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, Return. Now same thing again. I'll count them, but you do the full section. So each, you do 1, 2, 3, knee, next set. Yoi! 1, 2, 3, So in this case, the kinds of things that the individual is paying attention to will predominantly be the kamae. If you can get that position correct, then what comes after it is usually pretty good. And that's one of the harder things with this set of techniques, is getting that initial movement correct. Okay. So we're going to move on to the tameshigiri here in a second, but first, if you think of Japanese swordsmanship, what we're demonstrating is a lot of back and forth. One person attacks, another person counters. maybe you want to adjust the situation, the scenario, and look for or create an opening. So that's the basic idea. Now, looking at tamishigiri, basic cutting. Richard's going to demonstrate some basic cuts. These are going to be very similar to or identical to the suburi we did earlier. The cut has a starting point and a finish point, and the name furidome, that second half, tome, means control. So he's going to be performing these cuts with a lot of control to demonstrate, number one, to me, that he's safe. Control. And number two, very clean cuts. And what he's focusing on as he does this cut is whether or not the edge geometry matches the cut line. So you can imagine if I'm cutting straight down, my edge has to be up and down. If my edge is horizontal, but I'm cutting down, it obviously won't work. Now with the straight up and down, that's easy to maintain. But as you change the angles, it becomes much more difficult to maintain that alignment when you're moving more dynamically. We start with these basic cuts so that you can learn how it feels and learn how to maintain that alignment. And then we will progress it and make it increasingly more dynamic. Great. Oh. Oh. Oftentimes, as you make the cut more powerful, it becomes more difficult because your technique quality decreases as you try to add. Hey! Oh. Oh. So next up, Bob is going to show a slightly more dynamic approach to some of those cuts while they're switching out. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what these targets are. These targets are called tatami omote, and they are the top covering of the tatami mats that Japanese dwellings have on their floor.
How was that? Awesome. Thank you once again. We want to thank Morton Arboretum once again for inviting us to be part of the shows every year. So thank you everybody. Once again, we're the 7-Star Line Dance Group. If you have any video or you want a picture, you want to tag us, feel free to tag us on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. Thank you.
So what Bob demonstrated was Makuri style kesagiri, and that other style was where he was cutting through multiple times. Each cut finished where the next cut starts. And then on the second target, he demonstrated. So initially, I'm going to focus on a single target and do multiple lines. And then I'll focus on the next target with a different set. What I want you to look at is the rhythm. Is it all 1, 2, 3, or maybe double 1, 2, 3, 4, or what have you? A large part of swordsmanship is not just moving the blade around and moving your body around, it's how do you move in time? What is the rhythm of your movement? What is the rhythm of the cuts? And as you become aware of that rhythm, how do you use it to your advantage? If you understand the rhythm of your opponent, the timing of your opponent, you can use that against them. But it starts with creating your own rhythm and understanding.
have to practice. We can do it again. Yeah, they're gonna do it again.